I thought I had met the perfect woman. We met in the last year of college at a party and hit it off instantly. She was a beautiful blonde with sun-kissed skin, and she could have been a model, reminiscent of a Kate Upton type. She was kind, compassionate, sympathetic, a good listener, and had an active life with many friends. She liked my friends, and it was awesome to see how our friend groups merged over the 3 years we knew each other. Several of our friends began dating each other. It was some of the best times of my life. I was aiming for a postgraduate degree in finance, and she had a degree in contractual law. This is just to say we ended up being successful in our own rights. But I'm no slouch in the looks department either. I'm 5'11" inches, 190 pounds, and I like the gym. I wasn't a super athlete, but let's just say I was built. However, I was, and am, very shy and didn't have many prior relationships before meeting her. The first evening we met, we were smitten. The first night, we talked all night. Then it progressed to texting and phone calls daily, then weekly dates, and after a year, when I started my new job, she moved in. I loved her family, and her family loved me, mostly her mother, as her father was standoffish, as he was with everyone. It was a whirlwind romance. After 2.5 blissful years of overseas vacations, hiking trips, and luxury vacations, I proposed to her. She said yes. I was over the moon. She took on all the planning for the wedding. We talked about our futures together, buying a house, children, and family trips that we would take together. Then it happened. One evening, after we both got home to our apartment, she was a little distant. I think I noticed it right away, as we were always very affectionate towards each other. This happened about once a week for the first month after the proposal, then it became more frequent. I would have been none the wiser, except that I used to listen to a lot of Reddit on YouTube. So, I waited and observed. These bouts of ignoring me would only last a couple of hours, then she would be right back to normal. But after 6 months, with the wedding in a year, she was like this almost every night. The sex was still great. My relationship with her parents was still great, but over Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky, we lived just north of DC, she was standoffish towards me in front of her mother. Now, her mother was a very observant woman. She pulled her daughter aside to talk, and I could hear them arguing. After some heated but muffled words, they returned to the rest of the family and carried on as if nothing was wrong. I figured I could ask her about it later and did so. She was unwilling to talk about it and asked me to wait until we were home to discuss it. I agreed, as I loved her deeply and thought we could work through anything. The sex was still great. My relationship with her parents was still great, but over Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky, we lived just north of DC, she was standoffish towards me in front of her mother. Now, her mother was a very observant woman. She pulled her daughter aside to talk, and I could hear them arguing. After some heated but muffled words, they returned to the rest of the family and carried on as if nothing was wrong. I figured I could ask her about it later and did so. She was unwilling to talk about it and asked me to wait until we were home to discuss it. I agreed, as I loved her deeply and thought we could work through anything. Was I wrong? The second weekend after Thanksgiving, she had a company Christmas party. I had planned on going but came down with food poisoning and had to back out. She had a girlfriend pick her up from our apartment as they planned on drinking a lot and had a designated driver for the evening. We had planned for her to be out all night, so I told her to have a blast and I would see her in the morning. So, as I was puking my guts out and barely able to get off the toilet for more than 30 minutes, I grabbed my phone and watched her location. First, it was a restaurant, then the venue of the company party, then a bar. None of this alarmed me until I saw her phone stop at a downtown hotel. At this point, I was miserable in more ways than 3, projectile vomiting out of my butt, mouth, and now soul. I finally fell asleep due to sheer exhaustion at 2 a.m. At 7 a.m., I awoke and saw she was still at the hotel. At noon, she finally came home, and I was on the mend. She was affectionate, and I asked her about the previous night without mentioning anything about knowing her locations. She talked about the restaurant, party, and the bar but then said she went to her girlfriend's house to crash for the evening, the first lie. For the next 3 months, she started working later and later, 3 to 4 days a week. As I began asking her about it, she became more and more defensive. I talked to her mom one evening when my fiancé didn't come home until late. I asked her mom about the Thanksgiving conversation, and she admitted that she suspected her daughter might be stepping out of our relationship, based on her body language. She also mentioned that her daughter had been more distant with her in their weekly texting conversations. With all this speculation in my mind, I kept it to myself. 2 weeks later, I got a new project at my company that required me to fly to the Midwest Monday through Friday for the next 5 weeks, starting in 2 weeks. It came with an increase in salary, and as I broke the news to my fiancée, she seemed delighted. However, I suspected that her excitement was for different reasons. So, I went online and ordered 4 motion-activated spy cameras for my apartment. I placed one in the living room/entry area, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one looking down our hallway. They were very small and connected to the internet via a hidden network, so they couldn't be spotted on the Wi-Fi network. I secured the cameras with a password and during my first week away, she had girlfriends over for the first 2 nights and never worked late once. On the third night, a guy came over, and I was enraged. I sat in my hotel room, screaming at the monitor and calling her every name in the book. Then they went all the way, first on the couch, then in our bed. She bent in ways for him that he didn't know were possible. What was the worst part was that as I was watching them get intimate, I called her to see how her day went. She heard her phone ringing and held her hand up for him to stop, interrupting their activity, and answered the call. I asked why she was breathing heavily, and she said she was at the gym working out. As soon as the call was over, she went right back to what they were doing. When I got home on Friday evening, I ignored her and went straight to bed. Early on Saturday, I got up and went cycling. I was so upset that I didn't even realize I had biked over 50 miles from our apartment. The furthest I had biked before was 30 miles. But that day, I went 105.6 miles. When I got back, absolutely exhausted, I showered. Then she and I went out that evening and had fun with our friends and had a lot to drink. Is it breakup sex when the one you're going to break up with is oblivious? I was bursting inside with heartbreak, anger, rage, and feelings of betrayal all swirling around in my heart and mind. She, who used to be so attentive, was oblivious to all of this. It hurt so much because I loved her so much. I finally confided in one of our mutual friends, and he told me that they all knew about it for months. Finally, I was told, they all felt sorry for me, but no one again said a damn thing to me. That's why they stopped inviting us out with them. I hadn't noticed it before, but I could look back and see that about 3 months prior, they gradually invited us/me less and less. So, I figured I would try to win her back. The next weekend, I planned the entire weekend as a complete indulgence for her in every way. We wined and dined, pampered ourselves with massages, and talked about future plans and how much I loved her. I knew I was starting to break through when, after her fourth glass of wine, she started to cry, and I could tell the guilt was surfacing. I asked her what was wrong, but she choked up every time she tried to speak. I then told her that if she had something in her past or was having some kind of conflict in her mind that she needed to discuss with me, I was more than willing to listen and, if forgiveness was needed, I was more than willing to forgive and move on. The only words that came out of her mouth were about how much she loved me. It actually hurt to hear that from her, as I now had 4 separate videos of her and the other guy in our apartment engaging in intimate activities. Over the next 8 weeks of traveling to the Midwest, the trips lasted for what would be 10 weeks, I recorded over 41 hours of her having a relationship with what I found out was her coworker. She never worked late once while I was gone. I tried every weekend to be extra attentive, and each week she grew more and more distant. After observing this for 8 weeks, I was done, so I devised a 12-step getaway plan. Gather evidence. Get her out of the way. To execute my plan, I scheduled a 2-week exclusive getaway trip for us at an all-inclusive resort in Barbados. She was ecstatic. Then, a week before the trip, I claimed I had to back out and told her to take a friend. I knew it was over when she showed no disappointment that I couldn't go. She scheduled a coworker to go with her. Terminate our apartment lease. It would expire 3 days into her trip, and I was the sole signature on the lease. Find a job in another town. The company I had been assisting in the Midwest had offered me a job with a slight increase in salary. Find a new place to live. I got an apartment in the when she is gone. Perform the following: take her to the airport, go back home, and pack all her things, same day. Saturday, get a new phone number, phone, and email. Cancel all social media. Separate us completely in regard to finances. Withdrew all money from our joint accounts and then closed them. I put all her money in an envelope and packed it in her things. Have the movers pack all my things up and ship them west. Take all her things to her mother's house 600 miles away. All my fiancé's belongings fit into the back and bed of my F-250 crew cab. Give her mother the evidence. Start my new life. I didn't want to do anything that was illegal, so I made sure that nothing of hers was missing. It was so hard to pack all her stuff nice and neatly away. I had never cried so hard in my life. I have read so many times on Reddit about significant others saying they will never do it again when caught, but they don't stop. My hope was that she would genuinely confess so we could forgive and move on. She never did. Twice she came really close, but her secret was too hard for her to reveal. Tuesday morning, I left our apartment north of DC for the last time. It took 10 hours to get to her mom's house. What happened when I got there, I was not prepared for. I arrived at her mom's house around 8 in the evening. I figured she would be surprised to see me since I was coming down unannounced. Since they lived in a gated community, I had to buzz her house from the front gate, so she was waiting for me outside when I drove up. I could tell that she had been crying when I walked up to see her. I asked her what was wrong, and she hugged me, bawling that she thought her husband was cheating on her with a much younger, skinnier, and prettier woman. Dumbfounded, I just held her for what was probably 10 minutes. She soaked my right shoulder with her tears and snot. When she finally composed herself, I asked if we could have a conversation. We went inside, and I inquired about her husband's whereabouts. She indicated that he had claimed to be going fishing with his friends at a remote cabin an hour away. Then she added, he dislikes fishing. She provided me with all the signs she had noticed, and apparently, this had been going on for about a year. So, after doing some research, we found a credit card charge for a stay at a 5-star hotel that was only 20 minutes away. A phone call later confirmed that her husband was indeed there for a 4-night stay with his mistress. 2 peas in a pod, I said. What? She responded. 2 peas in a pod, I repeated. Your husband is cheating on you, and your daughter is being unfaithful to me. That's why I came here to drop off her belongings and move somewhere else. I showed her the evidence in a binder containing screen captures I had collected. After examining the first few pages, she looked at me in disbelief. We both hugged and cried for a good 30 minutes. At that point, she told me to stop crying and looked at me, saying, well, tonight there's nothing we can do about it except for you and me to have a few glasses of Moscato and spend time in every room of the house. She grabbed 2 wine glasses and a bottle of Moscato wine, heading out to their private pool deck, asking, are you coming out here, or are you going to seek revenge? I won't go into much detail, but that night and for the next 3 days, we spent intimate time together nonstop. I explored every aspect of her beautiful body. I must have made love to her over 25 times during that period. After those days were over, we said a passionate goodbye, and I drove to my new destination. She kept me informed about everything that happened when my now ex-fiancé returned. The day my fiancé got back was quite dramatic. I had canceled my phone the morning of the day she returned. So when her plane landed, and she called for a ride, it indicated that the phone was disconnected. Apparently, she had her lover take her home. He dropped her off and left. When she reached the door, a strange couple, the new tenants, answered it, and she freaked out. I can't tell you how many times she tried to call me because, again, the number was no longer valid. She went to stay with her girlfriends for a while since her coworker was already married. When she called her mom in a panic, her mom told her that I had come down and dropped off all her belongings and mentioned that all her money was down there as well, 600 miles away. Her mom didn't tell her about our relationship but did inform her that she knew she was being unfaithful to me. I had found a new job, a place to stay, and a new career far away from her, and her mother was separating from her father due to infidelity. Apparently, she cried for days and took a week off from work. However, she eventually found comfort in the arms of her married lover. Her mom never revealed my whereabouts to her. I had completely cut off that part of my life. The only connection I had to my past was through my ex-fiancé's mom, and she has kept our secret to this day. Here is a little bit of what happened afterward. As for the timing of the events that allowed me to leave her, a lot of it was extremely fortunate timing. The lease ending, the successful job search, and the phone plan ending. Things could have unfolded much differently if any of those factors had been different. My ex-fiancé's mother, EFM, stayed in touch with me for several months afterward, as we both experienced the loss of our relationships and shared a form of revenge against our significant others. However, neither of our respective significant others found out about what happened between EFM and me. EFM eventually visited me after 7 months in my new location. But much to the disappointment of many of you, we only talked. We both actually regretted what we had done together but acknowledged that it was in the past and in the heat of the moment, days of heat and moments. She mentioned that her daughter knew that she, EFM, knew my whereabouts and was very upset that she wouldn't reveal my location. EFM asked if she could tell my ex-fiancé where I was and provide a way for her to contact me. But I requested that she not tell her as I had moved on to my new life. EFM and I had extensive discussions about the possibility of her and her significant other staying together and working things out. EFM shared that her husband was extremely remorseful and came clean about everything. She said it was a lot to take in and had asked him what he was going to do to earn back her trust. He gave her all his digital passwords and allowed her access to everything he had ever done to harm their marriage. EFM ended up being very angry but recognized that he was genuinely trying to repair the marriage. EFM mentioned that her forgiveness would come with time, but trust would take longer. What caused him to snap back into reality was when she confronted him about the affair and showed him evidence of what his daughter had done to me. EFM was an amazing woman in every way imaginable. She also stated that if he strayed outside the marriage, she would be allowed to do so as well. He picked up on the again phrase and asked her what she meant. She told him that as soon as she found out he was cheating, she had relations with the first eligible man she found. He was devastated. EFM said they cried a lot and agreed to separate for a short time to give each other space to articulate their thoughts and determine if they both wanted to fight for the marriage. Ultimately, they attended marriage counseling and, as of May 2020, were still together. As for my ex-fiancée, she was devastated by what I had done to her. When she finally went to her parents to gather her belongings, she was presented with evidence of the affair and was deeply embarrassed. EFM had edited the binder so that when her father saw it, he would not see inappropriate pictures of his daughter. Regardless, my ex-fiancée was crushed. She didn't find out that her mother had my contact information until months later. She begged her mother for my information, which strained their relationship. However, her mother also told her that if she attempted to find and contact me, all the evidence would be released on the internet by me. This insistence on my ex-fiancé's part prompted her to come and see me. She was also upset about her parents having difficulties in their marriage. According to EFM, my ex-fiancé was depressed for several months and sought counseling. She immediately ended the affair with her coworker once she returned from her parents' place in Louisville, KY, and began looking for a new job. Recently, I found out that she got married and has 2 beautiful twin daughters with a good man. She still lives in the DC area and works from home, enjoying her new life, according to EFM. I'm glad that she was able to turn her life around and find happiness. I recently destroyed all the incriminating evidence I had concerning my ex-fiancé, as I didn't want to be the person who would hold her hostage for the rest of her life. I asked EFM to convey this to my ex-fiancé. If I had been on the receiving end of that information, it would have caused me many sleepless nights. As for myself, let's just say I am content with my current life. EFM and I initially talked every few months, but now we communicate once or twice a year, usually with brief updates on life's minor changes. The only unanswered question for me is whether, if EFM and her husband were able to repair their marriage, my ex-fiancé and I could have done the same. But I never gave it a chance. One can only speculate. Our lives have taken us on vastly different paths now. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend while I was laying next to them. Hey everyone, something really upsetting happened to me yesterday, and I'm feeling quite overwhelmed. I had been in a relationship with my boyfriend for almost 3 years, and I also had a friend whom I had known for nearly 2 years. Yesterday, I decided to go out for a drink with my girlfriend to spend a nice evening together. While we were hanging out, my boyfriend texted and asked if he could join us. Both my girlfriend and I agreed, and he came over, and we all had a good time. Later on, we headed back to my friend's studio apartment. Along the way, I opened up about some personal insecurities, like feeling foolish at times because of my hair color and expressing my discomfort with the idea of threesomes, as it made me feel gross and uncomfortable. Once we arrived at the apartment, we watched a series together. I must have fallen asleep at some point, and when I woke up, I noticed my girlfriend was continuously rubbing my boyfriend's belly. I immediately expressed my discomfort to my boyfriend, but I eventually fell back asleep. My girlfriend was also getting ready for bed, and I noticed she had changed into a silk kimono, which was unusual since she had been wearing an oversized t-shirt and pants earlier, a red flag for me. I was quite exhausted, so I drifted off to sleep again. Suddenly, I woke up, sensing movement on the bed and hearing heavy breathing. I was paralyzed, realizing what was happening. I went to the bathroom, trying to gather my thoughts and figure out what to do next. Eventually, I made the decision to pack my things and leave. While I was packing, my boyfriend went to the bathroom and I confronted my friend, calling her a disrespectful person. She responded with a feeble apology, but it didn't mean much to me. My boyfriend entered the room, and I ended our relationship on the spot. I swiftly left, with my belongings in tow. He followed me, pleading to take me home and ensure my safety, but I refused. As I walked home, he continued chasing after me, expressing how stupid he had been and how he never wanted to lose me. It was the first time I saw him cry, but by that point, I couldn't bring myself to care. I'm at a loss for what to do now. I see my friend regularly at school since she's in my class, and I don't know how to handle the situation. I am consumed with anger and confusion. Update. My BF 22M cheated on me 18F with my best friend 19F while I was laying next to them. Hey everyone. First off, I want to give a big shout out to all of you for the amazing support you've shown me. Seriously, it means the world to me. Now, let's dive into the story. So, I went over to my boyfriend's place to grab my stuff, and boy, did things get intense. We started talking, and before I knew it, I was yelling at the top of my lungs. But here's the juicy part, I finally got to hear his side of the story. Apparently, it all started while we were chilling and binge watching a series. Both my girlfriend and boyfriend were into vaping, although I never really got the appeal. Anyway, turns out my girlfriend has this knack for mooching off others and being broke all the time. And guess what? She even used my boyfriend's vape. While they were puffing away, something fishy was going on. As my girlfriend got busy adjusting her blouse, my boyfriend couldn't help but notice. And here comes the sneakiness. She strategically placed the vape between her breasts, making it impossible for him to ignore. To top it off, she kept unbuttoning her blouse, making sure he got an eyeful. Poor guy had to rescue the vape from its booby trap every time. Then she was rubbing my BF chest, and that's when I woke up and caught them red-handed. Making the story funny is my coping mechanism. I'm still dying inside. Now, I confronted my boyfriend right then and there, as soon as my girlfriend went to the bathroom. I decided to not make a big scene about it, and let things cool down a bit. But then I noticed something peculiar. My girlfriend had changed into a kimono. And let me tell you, she hardly ever wears that thing. Normally, it's oversized t-shirts and pants for her. Anyway, I was too exhausted to dwell on it, so I passed out again. Little did I know, while I was sleeping like a log, my girlfriend was turning on the charm. She dropped that kimono, revealing more of herself to my boyfriend. She made a move, tried to plant a kiss on him, but he initially rejected her advances. However, persistence paid off, and he eventually gave in. Things heated up as she started pleasuring herself right in front of him, even guiding his hand along her body. And that's when I woke up, feeling and hearing every damn thing. After my intense conversation with my boyfriend, I couldn't keep the story to myself. I ended up sharing it with my entire class, so now everyone knew what had happened. Fast forward to the day I had to face her again, and there was something I needed to retrieve from her, the Apple Pencil. And surprisingly, the first thing she handed over was my Apple Pencil. The class began, and conversations buzzed among my classmates. Suddenly, someone commented, "That's one messed up story you've got there." It was my cue to speak up. "You think that's messed up?" I retorted, and the discussion kicked off. People chimed in, expressing their thoughts. She first said that it was our business and others shouldn't get involved. However, she herself admitted that she would do it again, even with another best friend. It was a shocking revelation, making her come across as a truly messed up individual. Now, here's where things get interesting. Unbeknownst to me, my story had made its way to TikTok and was spreading like wildfire. I was surprised, but secretly grateful for the exposure. Fast forward to today, she returned to school, acting as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't done anything wrong. However, many people from our school had already seen the TikTok, and it had quickly become the talk of the town. The best part was seeing her discomfort. We had a movie outing for school, and the topic of conversation revolved around my story. It was an incredible feeling knowing that everyone knew the truth. She sat alone at the front of the cinema, and it was satisfying to witness her isolation. Unfortunately, she later joined our group, showing a surprising amount of audacity. She had even shared a version of the story with a few of her friends, albeit leaving out some crucial details to save herself from the drama. She claimed she was forced into the situation, but based on what I had seen, heard, and knew about this friend, I found it hard to believe her excuses. At this point, I'm contemplating exposing her name on Reddit and TikTok, and revealing her true nature. She acts all high and mighty, pretending not to care and even taking pride in her actions. But I refuse to let this slide. It's time to confront her and make sure she faces the consequences of her actions. I want to clarify that while I don't solely blame her for what happened, her behavior in handling the situation has been incredibly nasty. On the other hand, when it comes to my ex-boyfriend, I can see genuine remorse in his actions. This realization has taken away the satisfaction I once felt in seeking revenge or taking further action against him.